everybody, and thank you for joining us to Let's Talk. This is the show where we inform, inspire, and motivate. I am your host, author Dre Lett. Thank you for tuning in. We've got some great stuff to share with you tonight. This is what I call Let's Talk About Medical Mondays. Yes, indeed. In light of all the recent mass shootings, we have Dr. V here, our show's medical doctor, here to talk about gun violence and how to stop it. She will be on the virtual stage shortly. And what's hot news? According to CNN, the gunman in the deadly Walmart shooting in Chesapeake, Virginia, purchased the handgun he used the morning of the attack and left a death note outlining grievances against people in his life, city officials said. The note found on his phone talks about God, the Holy Spirit, and he felt his coworkers were actually mocking him. He said in his note, quote, "The associates gave me evil, twisted grins, mocked me, and celebrated my downfall the last day. That's why they suffer the same fate as me," the note says. He goes on to say, "I wish I could have saved everyone from myself. My God, forgive me for what I'm going to do." Oh my gosh, it's such a shame. Mental illness is so real. And my thoughts and prayers go out to the victims and their families. It's just so, so sad. And that's the whole reason why this Medical Monday, we've got Dr. V to talk about gun violence and how to stop it. So we're going to go to a short, quick break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back, we will have Dr. V on to talk about gun violence. Okay. So just stay with us another couple quick minutes. Make sure you put in the comment sections if you have any questions. Dr. V will reach out to you. And if you're watching this on Roku, you can go to the Facebook page, Let's Talk with Author Dre Lett, and there you can put in your questions and comments. Okay. All right, let's hear a quick message from our sponsors. right. That was the message from our sponsors. You guys make sure you support them. Richard wrote an amazing book about his 60 plus years of skating. And as you saw, the other sponsor for oil massages. So make sure you guys support them. And I want to thank them for being our sponsors on the show. All righty. So, you guys, as I said, you guys have seen Dr. V on the show numerous times. She is amazing. Her name is Dr. Valda Crowder. She's affectionately known as Dr. V. She works in one of the most busiest emergency rooms in the United States, and she has seen it all. She's here to talk about gun violence and how to stop it. So, without further ado, let's bring Dr. V to the stage.
Is gun violence a public health problem? And what exactly does that mean? And why are we not moving forward with solutions? Gun violence is a public health problem when you look at the definition. A public health problem is any problem that endangers the health and wellness of a community, organization, or workplace. These are problems that make people sick, shorten lives, or kill. Public health solutions can be policy, legislation, new drugs, drug testing, new procedures, or new protocols. Anything that tackles and solves the underlying problem. The end result when you solve a public health problem is that the community is or workplace is safer and people live longer. So let's talk about some examples that come to mind of public health problems that we have already successfully solved. The first one that comes to mind is automobile safety. Car accidents used to be almost universally fatal. But then what happened was we started making cars with seatbelts. We implemented seatbelt laws. We started making cars with airbags. We also changed the speed limits. And we even changed the materials in which we make cars out of. Another example is tobacco use. Tobacco use has dramatically decreased. We've seen a decrease in the incidence of lung disease, lung cancer, emphysema, and asthma. How did that occur? We increased the taxes on cigarettes. We put warning labels on cigarettes. We decreased the marketing and advertising and commercials, particularly around schoolyard areas. The last example would be making homes safer for kids. We are constantly looking at toys that may be unsafe, cleaning products, or cribs. So, gun violence is a public health problem, and it can be solved in the same manner in which we have actually solved these problems. So, first, you use data and surveillance to actually look at what is the problem, where is the problem, how frequently is it occurring. Then you also identify risk factors. What sort of things are associated with this occurring? You also look at protective factors. What sort of things are associated with this not occurring? Then you develop interventions and you test it in a small community or state. You look at what interventions actually have the best results. Then you take those interventions and you broadly apply them nationwide. So, as you can see, this is really not brain surgery. It is not that complicated. This is a simple public health model that we have successfully used in the past, and we can use it again with gun violence.
And so, without further ado, I want to bring her to the virtual stage. Hi, Dr. V.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm doing very well.
Awesome. We just
Yeah.
showed your video about gun violence. Um,
Okay.
and so I tell you what, I'm gonna turn it over to you and I'm gonna let you do your thing so you can tell us how you think how gun violence could be stopped. So I believe you have some slides and I'm gonna roll them over to
Cer-
you and let you do your thing.
Certainly, certainly. And let me just say, I want this session to really be a tribute to those people who have lost their lives. The most recent shootings in Colorado and also at I think it was Virginia Tech in Chesapeake, Virginia, and going all the way back even to the folks in Buffalo. And even all the way back in the 80s to the postal shootings. If we really look at this, San Bernardino, Sandy Hook, there's been a lot of shootings that we really need to actually take a really hard look at this. And this is a tribute to them because we actually really need to actually focus on how to stop this. So let's get the slide started because that's what I wanted to talk about. So thanks. All right,
Okay.
let's go to the next slide. All right, that was the presentation that you actually saw on a public health problem and why gun violence is a public health problem. And the importance of that is that there's not one solution. So when you hear people talk about either or, it's not one solution, it's multiple things. So there's a couple of important facts to know. 55% of gun violence is suicide. And in this case, in a lot of these cases, in these mass shootings, they do end with the suicide of the victim. So 55% are suicide, which means that access to quality mental health services must be a part of the solution to the problem. How do we identify seriously mentally ill people that have the tendency to violence? And how do we actually get them actual treatment? Because when you actually get them treatment, the risk of violence actually goes away. All right, let's go to the next slide. The other thing is waiting periods. I'm glad to see that people are now talking a little bit about waiting periods. Waiting periods vary dramatically throughout the different states in the country. California and DC require a waiting period of 10 days. Hawaii has a 14-day waiting period. Virginia, where the Chesapeake shooting had no waiting period. So this gunman in Chesapeake, Virginia, purchased the gun the morning of the shooting. So why is that important? So let's take a look at the next slide. Waiting periods really allow for a cooling off period, and they significantly reduce the incidence of gun violence. And it really doesn't matter if that gun violence is related to an argument or a dispute, a domestic violence incident, an argument between friends, or if it's related to even suicide. So expanding the waiting period would actually lead to a 17% decrease in gun violence and would save 910 lives every single year without imposing any restrictions on who can own a gun. But it definitely is a life-saving measure. I want to just go to the next slide and I'll show a little bit about why this is so important. This is a study where they talked to people who had attempted to commit suicide. They were not successful and then they lived. So they interviewed these folks. 48% of these people said that they first thought about making an attempt to kill themselves within 10 minutes of attempting it. So a lot of people think of suicide as something that maybe someone thought of or grappled with over a long period of time. And that's actually really not the case. About 50% of them actually have the idea and they make the attempt within 10 minutes. So waiting periods would be very, very important because you now have 10 or 14 days for that person to reconsider, maybe for them to get access to help, maybe for them to share those thoughts with other people that then actually help them get access to help. So waiting periods are really important when we talk about gun violence. All right, next slide. Now, there's a lot of talk about assault weapons. And in general, when you look at the guns that have been used in all of these shootings, they all are very similar in that they're military style weapons. They're weapons where the cartridge for the ammunition is longer than the handle. So those are high capacity guns. And they are military guns that can actually spray bullets. They can spray 100 bullets in a couple of minutes. So in that type of setting, calling 911 or calling the police is really not going to stop these shootings, right? So, the old adage of a good guy with a gun to stop a bad guy with a gun, with these sorts of high capacity weapons, you really don't even have the opportunity to do that. So it is really important for us to decide what sort of guns should be used for civilians and what sort of guns should be limited to military use. And these sort of high capacity guns that fire off very quickly, I think are very dangerous in our civilian population. Next slide. If you just take a look, Mississippi, Wyoming, Louisiana, Alaska, Missouri, and Alabama, these are the states that have the highest gun ownership, and they also have the weakest laws, and they've had the highest gun deaths in the United States in 2020. So if you live in a state with very, very high gun ownership and weak gun laws, it is more likely that a gun death will occur in those states.
Wow.
All right, next slide. So what sort of things would make a difference? So we talked about banning military grade weapons. We also talked about banning large clips, or, where someone can actually, shoot 100 rounds without reloading. This is very important because reloading is the time when people who are under attack can actually tackle the shooter or do something. Screening for mental illness at the time of gun purchases, very, very important. A federal red flag law. Red flag laws allow people, family members, physicians, to actually say this person is dangerously mentally ill and should not own a gun. It is a court. It's almost like a temporary restraining order. They go into court. There is an evaluation done in a court setting that then determines if that is true, and if that is true, the person's guns are taken away. We need to have something like that. Currently, I am able, if someone has a seizure, to write a letter to DMV, and your driver's license is taken away because you cannot be driving when you have a seizure disorder where it has not been controlled for at least a year. So it's really important that people go through all sorts of things in their lives, and there are some times when people go through a period of being mentally unstable, and they should not have guns during that time period. The other thing that's important, expanded mental health services. I know for a lot of people who are trying to get mental health care, there are long waiting times. It is difficult to get to see a provider. We need to expand it so there are more on-demand services that are actually available. A minimum age of 21 to purchase or own a gun, and also increased liability for gun owners that are not responsible. There's a lot of talk about responsible gun ownership, but there's not liability or there should be increased liability for gun owners that are not responsible. We are seeing for the first time with the school shooting in Michigan where the parents are actually being prosecuted and actually being liable. We need to see more of that. That's like the first case that we've seen related to that. We need to actually see more of that so that gun owners will really take their responsibilities very seriously. So those are just a couple of things that can be done that would really make a difference.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. The Michigan case, that was good to see the parents take ownership. Well, they're going to be tried on that. So, my
They're
goodness.
going to be tried. Yes, absolutely.
Hmm. Hmm.
Absolutely. All right. So we're able now to kind of go to some questions because I'm kind of curious what people, think and what they, what questions they might have about this. Because this is something where each of us really have to take a role. We each
Hmm.
have to advocate for this in our local jurisdictions, in our state politics, in our communities. We really have to, we really have to pay attention to this because gun violence is going to impact all of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, for those of you watching this show, if you have any questions, I'm going to put across the screen how you can respond and ask your questions, and I will get the questions over to Dr. V, and she will have an answer for you. We're going to be taping these called Medical Mondays regular, and she'll have different topics that she'll discuss. But at the bottom, you can watch the show on Roku and J-Own Network. And or you can go to the Facebook page, Let's Talk with Author Dre Lett, and you can put your questions in the comment section of the show, and she'll go back and make sure to answer them. I have one, Dr. V, as you were talking about the different shootings and things of that nature. What this might sound really, really crazy, but I thought about this. I'm originally from Detroit, and the inner schools or inner city schools in Detroit at one time, I don't know if they still do, but at one time they had metal
Hmm.
detectors. What are your
Hmm.
thoughts on metal detectors going up in movie theaters, grocery stores, wherever you go, where it's a public setting, you got to go through a metal detector? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So one of the things, so you're talking about hardening these places where we all
Yes,
go, right?
yes.
And
Hmm.
so, that is certainly one thing that we can do. It is very expensive and very costly to put metal detectors everywhere we go, and also, like, let's say for instance, a security guard, right? And so,
Yeah.
and we saw even in Uvalde, Texas, they had an armed security guard on the presence, and that wasn't even really protective, right? And
Okay.
so I think that, that certainly is something we can harden the areas that we actually commune in. Where I noticed, I went on a cruise recently. They make sure you go on through a metal detector on a cruise. So there you can do that. I think that and I think that we will see places that will actually do that, but I'm not really sure if that's going to actually solve the problem, right? It may decrease the problem to a certain extent. I think particularly where you see large concerts, large mass numbers of people, I think it will help. We see it already at football games, and certain sporting events, and we may begin to see it at schools and churches, etc.
Yeah, because I know I was grocery shopping, for the holidays, to cook holiday food, what have you. And as I saw the grocery store was really packed, and the first thing that entered my mind was look for the exit doors. In the event some crazy
Right.
person comes in here and shoot. And it's sad that I have to think that way, but it's just a crazy time that we're living in. It really, really is.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think it starts with the mental, like the guy that shot up Walmart. He had some mental issues, obviously.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how do you detect that? How do you stop that? It's so sad.
Yeah, so I want to do another Medical Monday on how do you actually detect signs of mental illness in children, because
Okay,
most mental illness actually shows up between the ages of about 14 and 15 and 20
okay,
and 25 or so. So it's really important that parents become aware and get their child checked when they see certain things like withdrawn behavior, a sudden decrease in their grades, a change in their ability or their how much they like the things that they used to do. And I want to do a whole Medical Monday on that as well, because I think it's important. He had in his note that he was upset about his parents and that he felt like they didn't recognize the signs of him struggling. And I think it's really important that we actually look at, some of our children as they're developing are really struggling, and we have to pay attention to that. And we have to actually get them into a setting where they feel safe to talk to a professional.
absolutely. I totally agree because we've got to stop it. It's got to come to an end. Unfortunately, the politicians, they're not going to agree on the gun laws, and so if they're not going to agree to reduce things and put things in place to protect us, I think we should take it upon ourselves to protect us. And I think what you're mentioning, mental health illness, that's where we start. I
Yeah,
totally agree with
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
absolutely.
Well, Dr. V, I appreciate you as always coming on Let's Talk. You
Yeah,
always are a wealth of knowledge. You got to come back. And those of you watching, like I said, she's going to have a series of them, Medical Mondays. So tune in. Each different week will be different topics, and they'll all be on the Roku channel, MJO Network, the channel Let's Talk with Author Dre Lett, and she'll be there to talk about various subjects. So if you have any questions, again, make sure you guys put them in the comment section of Facebook. Let's talk with Dr. Dre Lett. And Dr. V, do you want to share your information in case they want to reach out to you directly?
sure, absolutely. My website is AskDrVWS, and my Twitter is Valda C. And at the bottom of all of the slides is all of my social media. So feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. V, as always. And I will see you next time. Thank you so much for coming on Let's
Absolutely.
Talk.
You're welcome.
Hey.
All right. Thank you.
Have a
All
good
right. Bye
night.
bye.
You too. So, you guys, as we close out the show, that was very, very good information. That is something that I think we gotta, this gun violence. If the politicians are fighting about it and they can't come to a resolution on the laws, there's things that we have to do from our end, and you gotta look for key indicators of people that you know of that may be struggling with mental illness or things that they may say that may lead you to believe that they could do something crazy. Hopefully not, but and when you go in public settings, make sure you look for the exit doors and think in your mind, if something does happen, how am I going to react? And it's sad that we have to do that, but unfortunately, that's something that I'm personally doing. I'm telling my family members to do because it's getting to be crazy. It really, really is. So thank you, Dr. V, for coming on and sharing that. As we close out the show, I always leave you guys with a positive thought. And the positive thought I want to leave you guys with is your life is your message to the world. Make sure it's inspiring. And that is from an anonymous writer. Again, quote, it says, your life is your message to the world. Make sure it's inspiring. Touch somebody and do something positive in life. Again, as I tell you guys, each week, do one good thing for one person each day, and you can affect 365 lives. That's huge. So, again, you guys, as I tell you all the time, you can view my show on the Roku network, which is under the MJ Own network. So, you go to Roku, you either have a Roku stick, Roku TV, or you can, most often, I'll put the link with the show, and you can click on that, and then you can view the show. My channel's called Let's Talk with Arthur Dre Lett. Again, Roku, put in the search field MJO Network, and then look for the channel Let's Talk with Arthur Dre Lett. That's me. If you want to be a part of the live virtual studio audience, we tape every Friday night. Not every Friday night, but most Friday nights at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Go to my Facebook page to make sure you're on top of when we're going to tape, and you can be a part of the virtual studio audience. You can ask questions and chime in and all that good stuff. And we would love to have you be a part of the Let's Talk fam. So, with those words, you guys stay safe out there. It's viruses and all kinds of stuff out there. Stay safe and stay healthy. And just know that if no one's told you they love you, know that I love you. And with those words, I'm out.